and it's been a bit of a process in learning how to mic my amp with a ribbon to get a good sound. So yeah, if I had to choose one, it'd be the 57. But these days, I've been using the ribbon mic a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree with you 100%. In fact, the mic I'm speaking on right now is called a Shure Beta 57, which is the same thing as an SM57, but it has a supercardioid pattern, so it's got a little bit of a tighter pattern, which is great for podcasting. And, you know, I'm looking right here. I've got, for those of you who are watching on Patreon on our video, I've got my SM57. And this microphone, I got this mic the summer of 1994 when I turned 12. Remember, my parents were like, you know, it was kind of my birthday, and we went to the music store, and I think my parents were expecting that I was going to want to buy another guitar, because I was pretty heavy into guitar at that time, even as a sixth grader, right? And I told them, I said, you know, I really just want to get a Shure SM57 microphone. And back then, in that little mom and pop music store, they were actually $129. So the price has gone down a little bit. They're about $99 now on a place like Sweetwater Guitar Center. And I remember that summer, Sheryl Crow's All I Want to Do Is Have Some Fun. That tune was #1 on the radio. And I remember all my friends, we would sing that tune, and I'd set this mic up. And I still have it. It's right here in my hands. And I tell you, this mic has been on so many sessions. And there's something about bringing your own mic, too. I mean, there's, you know, SM57 is like a Big Mac. You know, you can find them everywhere, and you think they're pretty much the same thing. But there's just something sentimental about a piece of gear like this, right, Will? I mean, do you find that certain gear, microphones or otherwise, it's just when you bring yours to the session, it just makes it feel like it's that much more special, right?
Well, I do want to say about the 57s. I isolated my amp track in a trio session I was doing. I was amazed. There was like next to no drum bleed, no bass bleed. It was just my amp. And we were not playing quietly. So yes, absolutely 57s. However, I am not as sentimental with mics. I haven't gotten there yet. I've been on my own deep dive of gear hoarding in other departments, but
Right.
it might be coming. I'm kind of afraid, honestly.
It's inevitable for all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, guitar stands maybe not, but everything else, you know, it's
Yeah.
just like, you know, it gets sentimental. Well, you know, the 57 too, this goes back to 1937, believe it or not. And then after World War II, a lot of the components that were being made in these, such as cobalt and copper, because a dynamic microphone like an SM57, like the one I'm speaking on right now, a Beta 57, is essentially a magnet that's wrapped in a coil all the way to the top, kind of like a fishing reel spool. And it's that magnetism that causes the mic to pick up and translate the acoustic response into the electric response. And if there's one thing that, you know, something like World War II, horrible event, of course, but the one thing that came out of it was that we came up with more durable elements, such as the copper and the cobalt and all the elements that went into this. Of course, we don't use cobalt anymore. We use a lot of other minerals in these microphones that create the magnets. But in the 1950s, Shure came out with what was called the Unidyne series of mics. And that's that classic Elvis Presley silver mic that mounts directly onto a mic stand. I mean, have you guys ever experimented with one of those? They're pretty cool and retro. Perry, have you ever tried one?
I haven't tried it, but I've been on gigs and sessions with people that have tried those mics, and they are cool. They are retro, but they're also extremely fickle, you know, and they're not like, they're kind of the opposite of a 57.
Right,
You're going to get
right.
all kinds of bleed with that kind of mic. It's not going to be necessarily as powerful. It's not going to give you as much output or capture as much output, but it is a cool sound, especially for vocals, you know.
And you know why those mics also didn't have as much output is because the SM57 and 58 in the 1950s and 60s were the first mics that Shure built that had transformers inside of them. So that gave them more power to go into the preamp and more power out to the house. Not to mention the cable that went into the microphone in the 1950s and into the 60s became standardized. And the technical term for that is AES-EBU, which stands for European Broadcasting Union, American Audio Engineering Society. They standardized the XLR cable. And so Shure officially called the mic the SM57-LC, which the LC stands for less cable. And it was a real interesting piece of technology because a lot of musicians were saying, hey, any way you can make the mic without the cable attached? I mean, can you guys imagine our guitars having the cable like soldered into the guitar? How annoying that would be after a while,
Yes.
right? You know? Yeah, so Shure responded to that, and then the 57 and the 58. I mean, watch all the footage from Woodstock, watch the footage of Hendrix up there. That's where you start seeing these handheld Shure microphones, and the 58. Of course, today, the 57 is still used on our president's podium. There's 2 of them that are used. And these microphones, interestingly enough, are actually manufactured in Mexico currently at Shure's plant, but for many, many years, they were manufactured in America, and it's, you know, talking about this topic today, you guys, I find that I think the Shure SM57 is honestly one of the great inventions, not just in music, but over. I mean, estimate. I mean, how many mics, Perry? How many
Yeah.
microphones do you think Shure has made? 57
Yeah.
and 58.
I know.
You know.
They're workhorses.